I'm JP.
And I'm Modger.
And this is News and Views. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to News and Views with JP and Modger. I'm JP, and alongside me is Modger. Modger, welcome back home.
Unfortunately,
both of us have just returned from Melbourne after what was a fantastic weekend at the Australian Grand Prix, and you can sympathise with us because it's back to business and back to doing podcasts just inside basically, which is not too exciting. Can't hear the roar of the V8s, can we, Modger?
No, unfortunately, it was a nice weekend. Nice shifts from the normal routine. Of course, we love doing the podcast. No doubt about that. But just the Melbourne Grand Prix left us for another year. We have to wait till next year till we can see it again.
Now, obviously, it's old news now. But if you don't know what we're talking about, we did some on-site podcasts at Albert Park, which is still worth a look at, and of course we have uploaded and will probably continue to upload maybe another couple of on-site videos there at Albert Park, just to give you a perspective of what it's like to witness the great event.
Yeah, and there's also a video up there of what it's like to get really up close to Sebastian Vettel's autograph day. That's also worth checking out. A very good video.
Yes, Vettel does good favours for his fans and handed out plenty of autographs, so check that out. Now, the Melbourne Grand Prix this year, just talk a little bit about that before we get into the race itself, had quite a good vibe about it this year, don't you reckon?
Yeah, I did. Numbers were up since last year. Yep. Really good build-up. Everyone was excited. I was excited. Because the build up, because it's the first race of the Grand Prix calendar, and last year we were there and there wasn't that much of a buzz because everyone was wondering about Bahrain because that was meant to be the first race, but Albert Park sort of was, although it wasn't officially, so everyone was worried about that. But now, this year, it was the first race and everyone was all excited. 2 Aussies on the grid. There was just a real good buzz.
Yeah, that's right. And as you did mention, numbers were up indeed. For the race day itself, they were up approximately 5,000. And for all 4 days, it was over 310,000, I believe, up from 298. These are approximate figures.
Yep.
And those figures were courtesy of The Age. So that is good news, and what I think that's done is help silence some critics. As many of you would know, in the build-up to the event, Melbourne had been a city divided. Some old fogies doing protests outside Albert Park.
Circuit of shame.
Yeah, sign saying Circuit of Shame. I just think they don't know how to...
Which is a shame, the fact that they
they should do that. But, people wanted to get rid of the event, like some people, and including some politicians who said that $50 million is too much to pay, although I think many would strongly disagree. And, on a beautiful autumn's day, I think those people were basically told to shut up.
Yeah, I think they were. It was a real good vibe about it, as we said previously, attracting so much tourism. I mean, throughout the weekend, I heard a lot of European people speaking their language. I thought that was great. Attracting fans on a global scale, which is, it's what you'd want from a Premier's point of view, the Melbourne Premier's point of view. I couldn't see why I'd want to get rid of it. I know it costs a lot, but it attracts so much tourism. Good, massive vibe. I really will be disappointed if they get rid of it.
Yeah, surely not. I mean, I watched the replay when I got home on TV as well, when Melbourne really was showcased in a spectacular manner. And like you said, tourism-wise, I know I spent a lot of money when I was over there, so
yep.
Definitely does its job. That's all I can say. Now, I know what you're waiting for, and that's about the race itself. we're going to wrap that up. At least we'll try and wrap it up,
Yeah.
do our best as we do. And, Jenson Button won the event, of course. He was in control from the first turn to the last. It wasn't a pole to flag because he started second on the grid, but it may as well have been. It was a very, very good performance.
Yeah, outstanding performance by JB. It was pretty much untouchable. As soon as that starting flag dropped, it just looked like he was in for a win, or at least from the first turn. Like you said, unstoppable. I think even Vettel, was saying in an interview that he was asked whether he'd catch Hamilton if it wasn't for that safety car, and he's saying he can't really answer that question, and that he probably would have finished in second anyway because Jenson Button was so unstoppable.
Now Button looked unstoppable to us, but for Jenson Button he didn't quite think the same. This is what he had to say.
It's in doubt every lap you're driving around this circuit. It's bumpy, it's very tricky, you're close to walls a lot of the time, and the sun's going down, and it's tough because it's in our eyes for half the lap. So every lap it felt a little bit in doubt. So a tough race, and amazing to come away with this victory. This team's done a great job. Vodafone, McLaren, Mercedes all winter has done great. Lewis did a great job yesterday putting on pole. I got as close as I could, and then today we came away with a victory.
Okay, yes, Jenson Button there describing how tough it really was to win, and it wasn't, in fact, a cakewalk. By no means was it a cakewalk. It was a very exciting and drama-filled race, very exciting to watch. Now, as Jenson said, Hamilton did a good job putting it on pole. Indeed, he did, but it was an average start from Lewis Hamilton, and didn't look the same driver as Jenson Button.
No, obviously not the start Lewis would have been looking for. Obviously on pole, drivers are on pole and only expect the best from themselves. Lewis, like I know I'm saying right now that he didn't look too happy at the end of the race, but he never looks happy unless he's won the race.
That's it.
But he has every right to be disappointed, I suppose. You have every right to be disappointed if you drop any places from your starting position.
Yeah.
So, he still put on a pretty good drive, I thought. Maybe, Vettel and Jenson Button were too good for him, I'm not sure.
Well, I think that's the way it should be in regards to how he never looks happy if he hasn't won. It is all about winning, and you wouldn't be a racing driver if you were happy about coming third. So, you can't have any arguments with that. And Hamilton, said that he was at odds to describe why Jenson was faster on the day, whether it was a problem between the cars or just the balance. It's hard to say, but that's Formula One. That's how it is. Nonetheless, still a podium finish, and by no means a disastrous start to the year. Just not the one he was looking for from pole position. Now, someone who was happy with how the weekend went was Sebastian Vettel, who had many problems during practice, including missing a lot of running time, and didn't qualify too well. But a second place finish, that was the stuff of champions.
Yeah, outstanding performance by Sebastian Vettel, I thought. Qualifying in 6th, he didn't have a very good run there. I think that was due to his limited track time during practice. And to come second, to gain 4 places in the race is really a performance that he should be proud of, and he should be confident into the next race. I think he should be beaming with confidence.
Yes, well, there's no reason why Vettel won't be very confident going into the next race. The Red Bull was looking a lot better package under race conditions than it was in qualifying, as was also exhibited by Mark Webber, who, he had a shonky start. He described it as a boxer having a, quote, shit first round. Mark Webber speaking his mind, and that's how it was. We have learnt, however, that it wasn't another typical Webber bad start. It was actually, on its own accord, it was actually a clutch issue. We've been informed, so not much you can do about that, but more of the same, driving to recovery.
Unfortunately, more of the same, but at least it's good to hear that it wasn't a driver issue, because I know Mark has had a lot of trouble starting in the past, but it's just what we've seen from Mark. A lot of last year, just driving to recovery. I really hope he can have a better start with Malaysian this weekend.
Yeah, well, his Twitter's not called Aussie Grit for nothing. Certainly displaying Aussie Grit on the day. And the Red Bull was looking in good race trim, as I mentioned earlier. Certainly a better race package than what it was in qualifying. And, at the end of the day, Sunday's where the prizes are given. And so there's no arguments there. Now, we'll just listen to what Mark Webber had to say after the race.
If you look at this time last year, I wasn't holding that sort of pace at all. So in the race for me, to have the sight of the winner just right there, there's still many positives to pull out of it.
Yes, as Mark Webber said, last year he was not in this sort of position, and as a matter of fact, he's never been in this position after the Australian Grand Prix, because that's his best finish, 4th. So
yeah, see, everyone keeps saying, it's the best finish for Mark Webber. And they were saying to Mark Webber, it's your best result in that you've ever done in Australia. And he said, it doesn't mean too much for me. 4th, what kind of stat is that really? His best finish was 4th. I mean, everyone's getting excited about it. I think it's nothing to be excited about. But I'm not putting a damper on his performance. It was a very good drive, but to me that stat doesn't mean much, and it doesn't mean much to Mark Webber either.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I didn't mean to get too excited about 4th there, Monica, sorry. Now, another Australian in the field was Daniel Ricciardo, this being his first Australian Grand Prix, and I believe the first time 2 Australians have finished in the points at a Grand Prix, which is...
it's the first time 2 Australians have been on the grid, I think.
No, could be. I haven't looked into that one, but... I'm
pretty sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that certainly added to the Australian Grand Prix, having 2 Australians on the grid, and Daniel Ricciardo with an amazing recovery after he had a first corner collision with Bruno Senna, and it was just a great drive, and we just hear from Daniel Ricciardo now.
It was crazy. I still don't really know what happened from lap 1 to 58, but the last lap was cool. I think I was a bit fortunate to be at the tail end of the group, so I could watch it all unfold and put a bit of an attack on John Eric, and he covered his line, and I knew I could probably make a switch back, and it worked out perfect.
Yes, crazy is the word repeated from Daniel Ricciardo, and it was a crazy drive.
Yeah, really a good drive. Obviously had that collision with Bruno Senna at the first corner, but after that really picked up his pieces and really put on an astonishing drive. I think on the last lap he was 11th and overtook Jean-Eric Vergne, and he was actually 12th. Oh, 12th.
Only one overtaking manoeuvre on that final lap though, which was on Jean-Eric Vergne. The other 2 positions he gained was an unfortunate Maldonado incident, which we'll talk about later, and also one with Rosberg, which eluded us at the time or at the Grand Prix. We were too excited, but Rosberg also having difficulty on the final lap, a collision with Perez, I believe, and he finished outside the top 10. So somehow Ricciardo going from 12th to 9th. And one thing that you will hear repeated often is that Daniel Ricciardo, in a car which used to be a Minardi, gains 2 points in his first Australian Grand Prix, which Mark Webber did in 2002, scoring 2 points for Minardi. So
yeah, well, don't know what to say about that, really.
There's not much to say about that.
Yeah.
Obviously, back then, Mark Webber's position, I think, was a 5th, if memory serves.
I think so.
Less points given out... points given out to less placings back then.
Well, he didn't. Daniel Ricciardo didn't mention that in this interview, but when I was reading the Age, he had some quotations from Daniel Ricciardo. And he was saying when he finished the race, he thought he was in 11th, and then when his engineer was like, P9, well done, he was like, shit, that's crazy.
yeah. Starting to sound like Mark Webber, really.
He's starting to sound like Mark Webber, just, nice, laid-back Aussie. Heaps of talent, I reckon.
Yes.
Really one to watch in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And enjoyed some time out after the Grand Prix, I believe, as we saw him down on South Bank there in Melbourne. Yeah. So, that's good. Drivers need that in their home Grand Prix, obviously. Now, so that was Daniel Ricciardo, who was on his Australian Grand Prix debut. Now, someone who was on their debut full stop for Formula 1 racing was Jean-Eric Vergne, who had an inconsistent race, but do you think there's positives to take from that performance?
Yeah, I think it would be.
It's not a bad finish.
It's not a bad finish. I'd be happy with that on a debut.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw Jean-Eric Vergne throughout the weekend, didn't we?
Yeah,
JP.
Yeah, we did.
He seemed pretty relaxed throughout the weekend. I don't think he should be worrying about too much. He had a pretty decent race. And I think he'll be able to do a bit better in Malaysia, because Toro Rosso do have a good package this year.
Yeah, definitely an improved package, and if his driving is anything like his personality, could go leaps and bounds, because he's a bit of a joker, as I came to realise after asking for a photo with him. He gave me a stone cold look for about a second and said no, and then turned around and informed me he was joking, and he was happy to have the photo nonetheless. So a bit of a character there, the Frenchman. Now, it's not very often we get 15 minutes through a podcast and not talk about Ferrari. Let's talk about Ferrari. They were a disastrous weekend before the race, but Alonso saving some face.
Yeah,
5th place is.
Yeah, definitely. Saving a bit of embarrassment, if you will, for the Ferrari team. Obviously, he had a bit of trouble during qualifying. I think he went off the track in Q2, and he only got a position worthy of 12th spot. And Felipe Massa, when did he qualify? 16th or something?
I think so. Yeah.
And he did not have a good race, obviously.
Yeah, well, again, we saw massive length between Alonso and Massa. At this stage of the year, Alonso's car could not be that much better than Massa's. So that was disappointing to see that our fears for Felipe Massa seemed to be going realised.
Yeah.
There wasn't great pace from the Ferrari, considering we saw through lengths of the race Fernando Alonso battling out with Maldonado, just
the Williams,
defending for his life.
Might I add, JP, after the race, both Fernando Alonso and Felipe Massa were expressing their discontent with the car.
Yep.
They were saying that they were pretty much struggling with it, battling with it throughout the whole weekend, and that's what it looked like out there. But, I don't see why there should be a massive gap between Massa and Alonso.
No, well, they definitely were struggling, and so the season starts very similarly. Very much the same for Ferrari. Now, they were a second slower after qualifying from the pole position, so it's not just race pace, it's also qualifying, which isn't great. Massa, he eventually bowed out of the race on lap 47 in the run to turn 5 after a collision with Bruno Senna, who was amongst the action all day, I guess.
Yep.
And that's a good segue to move on to Williams, actually, who, at least with Pastor Maldonado, seemed to have race pace.
Yeah, I was really pleased with the performance of the Williams team. Unfortunately, Pastor Maldonado did crash out in the first lap rather stupidly.
Last lap.
Yep, that's what I said. Okay, well maybe I didn't say that, but on the last lap he crashed out, and he was right. He was right up Fernando Alonso's exhaust for a lot of the race. I don't know what to say, but he was up there a lot of the race. I don't know whether to put that down to Ferrari having a shocking car or Williams Renault having a good car. I'd like to say Williams Renault having a good car. I reckon they have a pretty good season this year.
I'd like to say that as well. Definitely a massive improvement for the Williams team, and you can't really say that. Ferrari hasn't been great, but for Maldonado to be up at 6th, that means they're ahead of the likes of Lotus Renault and Mercedes GP after that race anyway. Although Mercedes, that's a bit of a question mark because they had some issues, which we'll talk about a bit more in depth later. But as my colleague said, Maldonado just pushing too hard on the final lap, and a day of disaster for Williams. Almost so good, and in the end finished with nothing. But we haven't seen the back of them, that's for sure. Now, Senna, as I mentioned, an incident-filled day. He had to retire on lap 52 after his collision with Felipe Massa. So, moving on briefly to Mercedes, Michael Schumacher retired early after lap 11. He ran wide and picked up a lot of debris, although I think there's something wrong with his car before he did that.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might have been a gearbox problem, I think.
Gearbox problem?
That's what I heard muttered through the radio system at the race.
Yep, and Rosberg also colliding late with Perez, so no points for Mercedes GP, and they had a little aerodynamic package which promised so much.
Yeah, I think a lot of the teams would be happy about Mercedes' performance. There was a lot of controversy whether their little aerodynamics package should be allowed. But you're really smart contraption they have there. Do you want me to
just briefly, yeah.
Yeah, well, basically what it is this hole in the rear wing that is exposed once the DRS flap is opened, and basically it just works like an F-duct, really, except it's at the back of the car rather than the front of the car. It just supplies air pretty much throughout the whole chassis until it gets up to the nose cone. So effectively just an F-duct that is activated when DRS is open. So we saw with the F-duct they covered something up with their hand and their cockpit. Pretty much same thing with DRS. They just click a button and their thing's activated. I mean, I don't see why this should be allowed if the F-duct is banned. I think this would be phased out, really.
I wouldn't be surprised if it is phased out, but the F-duct involved I think pressing a button is probably classified as something different. Probably not driver movement. I mean, it's a grey area, and I'm sure
it's a very grey area, but
yeah. So it'll be probably debated till the cows come home. I think between the top teams anyway.
But as long as it's still allowed, I don't think Mercedes would be complaining too much.
No, that's right. So just briefly wrapping up, Sauber had a good race, finishing P6 and 8 with Kobayashi and Perez respectively. Neither Caterham's finishing. Kovalainen picking up a suspension in the meantime after overtaking cars before the first safety car line. Confusion with the new rule, as lapped cars are allowed to go onwards, not behind the safety car. At a certain point, confusing. And then another point of interest, HRT not competing yet again in the first race of the season after not qualifying within the 107% rule. HRT seem to always be building their car still at the first race, and I guess that's what happens when you don't have adequate funding.
Yep.
So just to recap, Jenson Button wins his 3rd Australian Grand Prix out of the last 4. Sebastian Vettel was 2nd, and rounding out the podium, Lewis Hamilton. The 2012 Formula 1 Petronas Malaysian Grand Prix. It was inducted in 1999 and has been run at the Sepang International Circuit since. The race will go for 56 laps, or 2 hours, whatever comes first. The lap is 5.5 kilometers long, run in a clockwise direction, and Juan Pablo Montoya holds the record in the BMW Williams of 134.223. Last year's winner was Sebastian Vettel, who has won the last 2, in fact, and last year Jenson Button was in 2nd and Heidfeld in 3rd. And Modger, would you like to take us around this? Well, it's becoming an old track of the calendar now, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, this lap of the Sepang Circuit is with Lewis Hamilton, and on the pit straight to start the lap. And the first corner is a hard braking right-hander hairpin, dropping into second gear at around 80 k's an hour, then straight into another hairpin, this time a little bit slower, around about 75 k's, and then full on the throttle for a very long right-hander sweeping turn. Braking about the 90 metre mark, going to another right-hander at about second gear, 100 k's, and then straight back out, finding another left-hander sweeping turn, nearly in sixth gear, and followed by another right one of pretty same speed. And that's a two quick right-handers in about fourth to fifth gear. And we come to a longish left-hander hairpin at about the first gear. Then going to yet another long right sweeping turn. This time gets a bit narrower. Then moving on to a left-hander followed by a right-hander in quick succession. And then finding sort of a longish hairpin around second gear. And now he's on the back straight. Nearly finding that limiter. Braking hard for yet another hairpin. A left-hander, this one about 90 k's an hour. And now he's on the pit straight, and that concludes the lap.
Yes, Lewis Hamilton across the line in 1:34.974.
That is the Sepang Circuit, which is this coming weekend. No weekend break for the drivers this time. It's straight into action, which is problematic for some teams and a blessing in disguise for others. I mean, if you're Jensen Button, you'd want to get straight into it, don't you reckon?
Yeah, people with the momentum would really want to get straight into it, and in other words, Jensen Button. But it's funny you say that, because I reckon some teams that aren't doing too well, actually I'm just going to say one team that aren't doing too well, which is Ferrari. I reckon they'd really want to get over there straight away, get some work done and see if they can improve. I reckon they'd be anxious to see how they go rather than trying to put off races.
Okay, right. Well, it's funny you say that, because apparently Stefano Domenicali and Pat Fry are going back to Maranello from Melbourne.
Okay, well...
and then we'll be in Malaysia, I assume, by the weekend.
Okay, so that sort of, kills whatever I just said, so...
So think of that, that's a lot of travelling for those two, and that's how desperate they are to come to some sort of resolution with their car, that they're going to go back to their headquarters briefly to try and discover something.
I don't know what they're going to find there.
I'm pretty sure they can't do laps around Fiorano circuit, so I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to do something. And do you think how they're going to come out the other side?
Not good, really. I still don't.
Too soon.
Too soon. There's no way you can improve that much over a week. They're going to need I think they're going to need a whole month at Maranello to improve their stuff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to say that.
Yeah. Fair enough. In previous years, the Malaysian circuit has suited the Red Bull and their high downforce configuration. But I mean, there are still a couple of pretty long straights. So, who do you think it prefers? Do you think it's this year? Do you think it's a McLaren favoured track or Red Bull?
Yeah, interesting question, and one that I've been anxious to answer.
Glad I could deliver.
Yeah. A lot of you probably would disagree. I'm not sure if you will agree or disagree, but I reckon it's McLaren that this one suits. A few very long straights. Obviously, McLaren is best on the straights, one of the best on the straights. And I know the downforce package wasn't the best last year, but if you look back, I reckon from last year, the McLaren downforce package wasn't too good around Albert Park, but yet they pulled off a win. and another driver on the podium, that's being Lewis Hamilton. So, you know, they've got the downforce, I reckon, and they've got the straight line speed. It just makes her an ultimate car, really.
Yeah, good signs for McLaren early on, and I'm not too sure, but do you think it's attributed to their front wing? Do you think it's far more advanced than the others?
Yes.
No, should I say?
Front nose, yeah. I knew that's what you meant.
Hope the viewers at home knew.
Yeah, well... Anyway, yeah, a lot of the teams have their step-down nose, and, you know, that ugly-looking thing. But, like I said in a previous podcast, the McLaren... I think it was an on-site podcast I said this. McLaren have been working on this concept for a few years now, and they've come up with a design that's not ugly, it looks good, and it looks like it's working better for them. So, like I said before, McLaren's the team to beat this season.
Yep, there you can go. You've heard it from Modger firsthand. So it sounds like a formality to just ask you your prediction, because I think you've already stated it. But just for the sake of letting the viewers know at home, what is your official prediction for this weekend?
Unfortunately, I'm not able really to say what driver would win. I reckon it will be a McLaren.
Yep.
You know, just for the sake of the show, I reckon it will be Lewis Hamilton's victory. Then, you know, the next two spots are really hard to say, but I'm going to say it will be a McLaren one too.
Okay,
I reckon.
Bold.
And I reckon this is a really odd thing for me to say, but I reckon Schumacher will get third. Mercedes.
That is pretty odd.
Mercedes. I think that they have it. They showed some pretty good stuff at Albert Park.
They showed some good stuff, just inconsistent stuff. That car is crazy fast in a straight line, and I guess one of these weekends it might come together for Michael Schumacher. I, however, Modger would disagree with you.
I'd love to see Schumacher on the podium.
I think a lot of people would.
That'd be hilarious, but
I don't think that'll happen, and I'm going to go with a dull prediction and say that Vettel, with some extra running in practice under his belt, I think will come up with the goods, although I say that with no confidence. I think McLaren is a very large threat. I'm not even going to bother guess the rest of the podium because I'll just screw it up. So never mind. Anyway, that's all we have for this week's edition of News and Views. Be sure to follow our Twitter at JP Modger. And just keep checking our website, because we will continue to upload some footage from the Albert Park weekend anyway, until it's stale, which it would be by next week, I assume.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you guys don't get too discouraged by the looks of the fence.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's like at the race. So that's all we aim to bring you, just that experience. So anyway, on behalf of JP and Modger, it's bye for now.
That's it.